Thank you for having me.
Okay. Maybe we could start by saying where were you born, what your schools, where did you go, what schools did you attend?
I was born in Brooklyn, grew up in Queens. I went to Regis High School and Fordham College, Cornell, NYU, where I got a PhD.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and you say oration. In Latin, I think oration means public speech or even a prayer. What is it?
Well, when the quincentenary of Columbus's arrival in the Western Hemisphere came about, it was a surprise. You know, 100 years ago they celebrated the quadricentenary with a World's Fair, with all kinds of monuments, parades, songs, every sort of thing. And many people, I think, were expecting the same, only maybe more so. Instead, what happened was that Columbus, on the 500th anniversary of his arrival and almost the 500th anniversary of his death, as it seemed to me, had died all over again. And it was a matter of intellectual consequence, but it was also a matter of enormous emotional consequence. And so I wrote a kind of a funeral oration. I used a very old model for the style of it.
What did inspire you to write this oration? What caused it?
Ah, okay. Well, you know, as we approached 1992, many historians began to review the story of Columbus and to say, well, we had been too accustomed to telling this in too triumphal a way. When we were growing up, we would hear about how Columbus was such a great genius and how he had brought the light of reason and science and all that to the New World. Now we heard about genocide, slavery. It wasn't really possible to deny these things, but there was more to it than that, because Columbus was not only whoever he was in the Renaissance and whoever it was that the King of Spain and the Queen of Spain had hired, he was also a mythological figure in the history of the Italians who had come to America. And that whole history was being vilified and pushed aside, many Italian Americans felt, in this moment of revision. And so it seemed necessary to address the issue.
But I heard that you did read it at some public event at Brooklyn College.
Yes, indeed. Well, what happened was that there's a group at Brooklyn College called Familia Latina, which is an umbrella group of all the Latino clubs and organizations. Familia Latina had announced a day of dignity for the 14th of October to protest the celebration of the Columbian quincentenary. Well, the head of the Italian American Club, Dina Alfano, who lives out here in this county, came and said to me, Professor Viscusi, what are we going to do about this? And I said, well, look, if we're really nice and we go to see them, maybe they'll let us protest with them. She was a little startled by that. And I said, look, Columbus was working for the King of Spain, and most of our Latino colleagues are descended from people who came here to do heavy labor. Which of them did my grandfather and your grandfather have more in common with, Columbus or these immigrants? Well, when you look at it that way, it becomes a totally different story. And two big issues became very clear. One, that other people didn't know, because we ourselves had really stopped talking about what it was like for Italians to leave Italy and come to live in America. It wasn't easy and it wasn't pleasant. It was a tremendous historical ordeal. Many families took 2, 3, 4 generations to recover from it. That story needed to be told. And second, it seemed to me, as it did, I think, to a lot of other people, that yes, Columbus did many dreadful things. He was, after all, a military officer. He was an admiral. But to blame one person for the whole set of crimes that Europeans had committed in the Western Hemisphere seemed a little peculiar. It seemed a little bit scapegoat-like. And since Columbus was the first and probably the most universally revered historical hero that Italians in America had. It was very painful to see all of this vilification going on and not to be able to answer it in any way.
But there are some Italian Americans who also don't want to see Columbus Day, for example, they want to celebrate it. They don't want to see Columbus as a hero. Are they correct, or what is going on?
Well, correct is a very overworked word these days. I think that it's perfectly understandable that one would feel that way.
Yeah.
Columbus was connected to the conquistadores. Columbus imagined himself a crusader. Well, you know, do we think of ourselves as crusaders? Are we willing to slaughter people because they refuse to recite the Apostles' Creed? I don't think too many of us feel that. Even Catholics don't feel that way anymore, and have for a long time not felt that way. I think that we've awakened to some of our historical blindnesses, and to blindly to defend all of that and to celebrate all of that seems as foolish as to just make believe that Columbus was guilty of what so many other people also have taken part in. If people don't want to celebrate it, I can't say that I blame them, but if people do want to celebrate it, you know, I mean, I think a lot of people are not so satisfied with such a position.
After the revision of history,
yes,
do you think that we can still keep the Columbus person as the spirit of human courage and human exploration and still remain a hero? I mean, people have killed, for example, people of responsibilities like Washington, let's say. He had to have people killed, and many other people, leaders in the world, have to have decisions of death and life. Can we now judge these people and say they are bad or they should not be honored simply because they had to give certain orders that sometimes resulted in death?
Okay, I think the issue is as between someone in history and someone outside of history. In the middle of the poem, I'll read a couple of lines that have to do with this. The poet says, "I look forward to the rise of a Columbian theology. Columbus, it will teach, lived 500 years in the character of a god. Once he died, that is to say his recent degradation, once he died, he acquired a new nature as a limit. We study the theology of Columbus to learn what are the boundaries of enterprise." Now, we could say similar things about, let's say, Napoleon, who, on the one hand, engaged in endless slaughter, and on the other hand, brought the ideals of the French Revolution into places that they wouldn't have reached in any other way. He absolutely intervened decisively in the history of Italy. So that, you know, when you're talking about a historical figure instead of a god, it's not easy to draw up the balance. That's what I would say.
Also, in the poem, since you quoted, I think I remember you were also bitter about the traditional Anglo-Saxon, Protestant, traditional societal way of life. You were somewhat bitter about it. Probably you want to displace also the guilt not only on Columbus, but maybe on our culture.
I'm not sure which part you're talking about, but the dramatic element of the story is what Italians meant when they came here.
No, I was talking about the idea that the environment was destroyed and the history of science, and it changed the...
But that's not only about the Anglo-Saxons. I mean,